Sportsline Podcast on the CHCH media platform. Certainly appreciate you checking us out. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Well, as we like to boast, Southern Ontario, and in particular, the Golden Horseshoe is a winner for outstanding born and bred athletes, coaches, executives, and sporting events. Today, we'll be chatting about the pride, joy, and sometimes painful Hamilton Tiger Cats. Now, with that subject in mind, let's bring in someone who's done everything with the club but suit up and play. From the fifth quarter, Rick Zamperin, always great to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. First things first, they would not want me to suit up because the record would be even worse. So let's leave it at that.
I was told that you might be a good punter.
You know, I can kick the ball around. Yes, okay. I can kick the ball around. My high school team did not have a tackle football team until after I graduated. We actually had a flag football team. And they were... I should say we were, because I was a part of the team for 2 seasons, 4-time flag football champions for our region. Ooh. Yeah, which is not saying a lot.
See, free agency's coming around.
There you go. I'm a free agent. You know, it's all coming together. Yeah.
You know, hey, first of all, how's the off season going? And but I'd like to get into something here that you've actually now taken the fifth quarter and from its normal post game show and expanded it.
Yeah, it's exciting. You know, the fifth quarter show on YouTube is, for eons, it's been a post game show. Game is played after the game. You know, fans have their say on, win, lose, or, on the rare occasion draw, how they feel about, the game and how the team did. And I thought, the CFL offseason is so long that I know we have free agency, I know we have the draft, I know we have the winter meetings, we'll probably get into that too, all these little kind of mini events during the offseason. I thought, from a consumer perspective, if you're a Ticats fan, you want to be entertained during the offseason. Again, this is a long offseason, 6-7 months. And I thought, the games aren't being played. We can't have a post-game show. Why not dip into the illustrious and legendary past of the Tiger Cats and talk about 2 unique things? So I have a couple of new features. One is called Legends. The other one is called Seasons. And Legends, I do a bunch of research and talk about the legends of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, from Bernie Filoni to Angelo Mosca to John Barrow. The list is endless.
Yes,
I can do years worth of these kind of features. And the other one is Seasons, just highlighting the most iconic seasons in Hamilton Tiger Cats history. And we started with the very first one in 1869, and it's kind of been a chronological series from there on in. And right now we're into the 1950s, really on the cusp of the glory years of this franchise. So, fifth quarter show on YouTube. Check it out. Hit subscribe. I'd love to get more likes and more people following.
That's right. And response has been good?
Response has been excellent. Yeah. When I started this thing back in the summer, I thought, a few dozen people, hardcore Ticats fans and probably family members would subscribe. And it's nearly 1,000 a few months later, which is kind of, again, very surprising, but at the same time, very fulfilling, because we have a great and passionate fan base in this community. And I think they're getting a kick out of the off-season features, but I think they're also itching for, the draft to happen and free agency to happen and, the season to get started, because the post-game show is really kind of the gem of the fifth quarter. It's what being a Ticat fan is all about.
Well, it goes to show you the need for content and the want for content, and especially, as you said, and this has been the fifth quarter going back 50 years, it is really attracted to the hardcore Tiger Cat fan that wanted to voice an opinion. Yeah. And to be able to talk about the team in these months of December and non-football months is definitely, I think it would be a good thing for the Tiger Cat fans. And because we haven't won a Grey Cup, and I say we haven't won a Grey Cup in 25 years, looking back at the glory years, probably a lot of fun.
It is. And, I thought I knew a lot about the Tiger Cats, and I do, but, going into the history books, I am learning so much, and so many fans are responding to this too, learning so much about whether it's a player or what happened with the stadium or with the Tigers or Wildcats franchise. There's so many, interesting tidbits of information that I'm either rediscovering or discovering for the first time, and it's kind of cool.
I will ask you this question because I have been asked this question, whether it be on social media or people just bumping into me.
Okay.
Do you have any inside sources on what the name in a year will be of the stadium?
No, I don't. I think there's going to be a company that I think the Tiger Cats and Hamilton Sports Group already have a deal in place, if not very close to. Tim Hortons was a wonderful partner, as you know, and is an iconic brand in Hamilton, as are the Tiger Cats. I think the next one will be very close to what Tim Hortons is and what it represents for this community. At least that's the hope. But I don't know. I couldn't put a company name out there, and if I did, I'd probably be wrong.
It's going to be so hard. I mean, we see this now. This is just pro sports, right? The names, I mean, you go back as far as, I don't know, the NFL Candlestick Park, right? And then turns into something else. And Philadelphia, first Union Center. Like, it's just so many things. Buffalo down the road, Marine Midland Arena. Like, you could go on and on. But these name changes happen. But it's going to be real hard to not call Tim Hortons Field, or what as it stands right now, the Donut Box.
Yes, I know of fans, and I have been guilty myself of, messing up from time to time and still calling it Ivor Wynn. There have been days where I thought,
I got my hand slapped because it's on the Ticats Audio Network. I got my hand slapped.
Well, I mean, for decades, from 1970, I think it was, until 2012, it was Ivor Wynn Stadium. That's where you went to watch the Tiger Cats, and there was the season in Guelph, and then Tim Hortons Field came, and then for 10 years, it's been Tim Hortons Field, the Donut Box, and if it's, let's say, Crypto.com Stadium, right? Like, there's millions of nicknames you can give that facility, but again, is it going to be a 10-year deal, and then after 10, are they going to go to another? I mean, as you said, that's pro sports now.
Yeah, that's just the way it works. Hey, let's talk about what's going on. The CFL winter meetings are going on in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I kind of joked on the 6 o'clock news the other day that those guys probably thought they were going to get in some meetings and a couple of rounds of golf. It's 8 and 10 degrees Celsius down there, so they're probably not getting a lot of work done on the golf course, so probably good that they're working hard and figuring out what's going on for the upcoming 2025 season. But what the biggest question is right now, and I got to ask you, we have not, look, what's happening with the schedule? Like, what? Come on.
Yeah.
This was supposed to be. Yeah. And they were targeting, as they have for the last, I think, 5 years, Christmas time. And it made sense. Christmas gifts, go on and on. Like, what's happening?
Yeah, and that was one of the questions I asked when Ted Govaya and Scott Milanovich were doing their kind of media availability at the CFL winter meetings. And I asked them, kind of jokingly, do you have any insight on what this thing's going to drop? And have you seen anything? Like, are you excited about it? And, neither would divulge whether it's happening today or tomorrow, whatever the case is. But, I mean, the latest, in recent memory, the latest that it's dropped, I think, was February 1st, and this was back in 2017. But you mentioned the Christmas aspect of it, and that is for me, that's a big component of it. The hardcore CFL fans are going to buy the tickets. They're going to buy their season tickets. They've already renewed, whether you're a Ticats hardcore fan or not. You're eyeing the games if you're not a season ticket holder to say, I want to go to Labor Day and maybe a couple of others. And but there are a lot of fans who are thinking, I'm going to go to the cottage this year. I'm going to maybe spend some time overseas, whatever the case is. They're making those vacation plans now, and not having the schedule, I think, is going to hamper some teams because they're going to lose, that kind of group of fans. Doing it before Christmas is the perfect time. Season ends late November. You got a couple of weeks to kind of finalize and make sure the venues that each CFL team is playing at, is not holding a concert or whatever the case is. But capitalizing on that kind of purchasing power at that time of the year is integral. And for the CFL to miss that window, I think that's going to cost them a lot of money.
Yeah, it makes me think, and I know what's going on in the in the front office and Randy Ambrose. It makes me think: is there a living and breathing commissioner right now? We haven't been updated. Yeah. There hasn't been a statement. Your fans are looking to spend money, and they can't right now. And of course, there has to be some planning too, in a sense, for the teams. Yeah. So to not have a schedule release right now. It's a 9-team league?
Yeah.
Does a computer?
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, I don't think, and I've never kind of actually done a story on this, but I don't think, the season ends and then they start working on the schedule. I think they're working on it throughout the year because, as I mentioned, concert tours are coming to these facilities or, whatever the case is. I think they have a general kind of idea of what the schedule looks like by or towards the end of the season, and then they kind of finalize it. Not having it now is kind of, it's really troubling. I know this too. The National Football League, which has a lot more than 9 teams, they use AI to formulate their schedule. And they don't do 1 or 2 or 10 or 50 schedules. It's like into the thousands. And then they pick which schedule they like best. And take this into account too. Not only do you have 30 plus teams, they're going to London, they're going to Brazil, they're going to Mexico, they're going to Berlin, and so now you have all these facilities that are being used by other pro sports that the NFL can say, hey, we'd love to play a game there. So yeah, for the CFL to not have a schedule at this point, either it's inexcusable or there's another reason for it, and I'm not sure it's a good reason at all.
Well, I wish they would just tell us.
Yeah.
And then we could just kind of wait patiently.
Exactly.
But I think you're getting a lot of people that are very upset right now. You talked about the winter meetings as we kind of talked the fact that Tiger Cats GM Ted Govaya and Scott Milanovich, head coach, they were together in their meeting as opposed to separate GM and coach meetings for every other team except for Hamilton. And I actually kind of like seeing them both together. And it just makes me think, and I know you heard my question, and I tried to be as basic as ever, is the working relationship. Ted has been doing things a certain way with Winnipeg in his methods for a decade now. Yeah. And then you have Scott Milanovich, who's also been kind of a guy on his own. And not only is he just a head coach, he's the offensive coordinator. So that's a lot of individual mindset. And I know he's working with the teams and the quarterbacks and all that said in terms of his offensive game planning, but he is the head coach. So it is his way or the highway. I'm really wondering about how that relationship's going to work.
Yeah, it's a really neat dichotomy. I think the benefit that they have is that they have worked together. And I think Scott mentioned for about 10 years or so, their previous relationship with the Argonauts, they had tremendous success there. Scott was the head coach at the time. And while Ted wasn't the GM at the time, he certainly had his hands into the player personnel and acquisition and, roster moves in Toronto. And Ted's done a wonderful job in a very similar role in Winnipeg. And now we have him in Hamilton. I think a lot of fans are excited that this guy who has had success really at every stop of the way is now in Hamilton. And I think, and Scott really made, I thought, a very interesting point where, they could have a differing or a difference of opinion, but at the end of the day, they have so much respect for each other that, yeah, they might get PO'd at each other for a day or so, but circle back and be on the same page in terms of roster composition, in terms of, how the players that Ted acquires is going to fit into the system that Scott wants to develop and execute both offensively and defensively and special teams as well. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, especially throughout the season, how they work together and what kind of moves are made.
I think people don't recognize or at least have an understanding that really, when the season kicks off, and I'll go back to preseason as well, too, as they're starting training camp, those two individuals will see more of each other than they probably will their own families.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Yeah, 100%. And that's one of the big challenges of coaching. Not only do you not see your family during the season, but it's from, in many respects, job to job to job to team to league to team to league. And it's just, Mark Killam is probably an outsider, a guy who spent 20 years with Calgary, was let go by Dave Dickinson, and then now is the head coach in Edmonton. He's an anomaly. There's so many coaches and a lot of, legendary coaches who have been in multiple stops. It's an unforgiving job because you get blamed when the team's not doing well, and when the team's doing great, it's the players who are doing great, and the coaches rarely get that tip of the cap. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how. And Scott is, as he mentioned yesterday in the team in the media availability, about 90% through in terms of solidifying his coaching staff. So that's going to be another interesting wrinkle to kind of see how the new personnel that they bring in, their restructured front office, and it's really, in terms of the front office, almost a brand new team.
It really is. I mean, Mark Hamill,
Drew
Alamang is no longer there, who had been with the franchise for nearly 2 decades, coming up, from all the way through the ranks. And we've seen that Ted has actually hired 3 men, in player personnel moves, which all have sort of some touchings to him already, right? And I think anyone in sports would recognize that you always have someone that's your friend.
That's right.
Or someone that you've worked with because there's a trust factor. Yeah. Right? And that's huge.
That's massive. Yeah. I mean, you'll have a head coach or coordinators hire assistants or receiver coaches, whatever the case is, based on previous experience working with that individual. Trust in football is massive. When you know what your assistant coach is going to do, when you know what the players are going to do and how they're going to react or act in a certain situation, what characteristics and skills they bring to the team, that's huge. Having that knowledge and that trust is massive.
Were you surprised that Coach Milanovich said these words, that Bo Levi Mitchell is the unquestioned number one quarterback. Did that surprise you?
It did not surprise me based on the season that Bo had. And also based on Scott's comments of, Bo gets benched. And he's not loving the fact that he's not the number one quarterback, because he certainly, we all saw it, Bo worked extremely hard to get back to not only a healthy human being, but a very productive player on the field. And yeah, he was having some struggles. It wasn't all his fault. Certainly the defense and the special teams unit wasn't really playing well at the start of the season. And I think Scott looked at Taylor Powell and thought this could be a spark or really a launching pad for his career. And what Scott said was that Bo didn't, while he was mad, because any starting quarterback would be, he also was very supportive of Taylor Powell and really was all in on making Taylor and the team as successful as possible, even though he knew he wasn't going to be on the field. And then Taylor, in that first start, gets hurt. Bo is thrust back into the equation, and he takes off. And so given how he ended the season, the last 9 games or 8 games of the season, Bo was unquestionably the best quarterback in the league. I mean, I can argue that until the cows come home, because he was, not only statistically, but even in terms of wins and losses, the team was just a different team.
It was.
And he was a different player. And for Scott to say anything else, I think would have been a big hit on what Bo did in the second half of the season. And I think we all know where Taylor is and where he can go, and whether Talia Tagovailoa is a guy who can take that next step or is even going to be given an opportunity to take that next step. I think this franchise right now and how the team responded to the way that Bo played in the second half of the season, I think that was the only thing he could have said when he was asked, who's the number one guy? Bo's got to be the answer.
I just thought there would be a little reminder that there's going to be competition. And it wasn't, it was flat. It was like, nope, this is where we're doing. And I love that you did bring up the fact of what he said, that what impressed him so much internally as a man is that the way Bo acted when being benched.
Yeah.
We've seen in pro sports when a guy gets benched, a quarterback gets benched, because he is such an important central figure that when he is told to sit down, there could be pouting, there could be division amongst the team.
Yep.
But he took the completely other route. Even in starting, he would say that this guy is just, it's so close. He's so close from being the guy.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time.
It's just a matter of time before he gets his own team or he is the starting quarterback. So, there was I see the reasons why he would say he was the unquestioned number one, but I have to say that I was a little surprised. So I think that's probably a big boost of confidence to number 19.
Absolutely. And I will say this too. I think now that is out, and I don't think Scott made an explosive statement. I think most fans just thinking, okay, that makes sense. Now, how does Taylor Powell respond, right? How is he in the quarterback room? And I don't think he's going to be any different, because all we've heard with Bo and Taylor and to a lesser extent Talia is that that quarterback room is very tight. They all get along. They all want each other to be successful. They all want the team to win. Yeah, they golf together. They have friendly competitions. There is a debate on who is the best golfer, but at the end of the day, that camaraderie is huge, and I think lends itself to why this team has been, or at least in the second half of the season, was more successful than it was in the first 9 games.
I had to, because the old saying goes, if you don't buy a ticket to the lotto, you can't win. It's very true. Don't go to the dance and ask the question. Yep. You're not going to get an answer. So I threw out to both men, Milanovich and Govaya, about their free agent shopping list, in which I was shut down pretty good, with a good little amount of humor that it might ruin their sort of bargaining power for free agency. But as you stand, you know the team as well as anyone. What does this 2025 team need to, most importantly, not get off to a winless start?
Yeah, and I asked a very similar question when I got on too, in terms of the free agency priority list and what kind of position groups will the team be targeting. And I knew Ted was going to kind of massage that in terms of not showing all his cards, which any GM would not want to do. I think the biggest need is still on the defensive side of the football, but I'll say this. If this team loses David Beard, I think that's a big loss because he was, and the offensive line was, exceptional in 2025. You know, Bo Levi was rarely sacked. They were in, I think, the top 2 or 3 in terms of sacks allowed. The offensive line, in terms of the run game, was very effective.
Excellent.
Butler at the start of the season, when Greg Bell was installed midway through, I thought they had some success. It wasn't electrifying, but they created the holes and the running backs got through them. So, aside from David Beard, I'm looking at the defense, and I'm looking at the linebacking core in particular, and I don't want to target any single guy, but when you look at players like Darius Pickett, Wynton McManus, you know, I'll throw a name like Simone Lawrence, who I know is not going to come back, but when you have these glue guys, the high-octane guys, these playmakers who are always around the ball, forcing turnovers, making their teammates accountable, getting the best out of each other, game in and game out, being consistent, being a disruptor, I think those are the types of players that any team would want, and certainly I think Hamilton needs, especially at the linebacking core, and I think there are a number of free agents out there, and I kind of hinted at 2 of them, that would look amazing in black and gold. Now, whether the financial picture makes sense to them and the Ticats, that remains to be seen. But I think that's probably the most glaring need in terms of free agency, that if I'm the GM, if I'm Ted Govai, I'm thinking, I got to solidify that position group.
I want to see a better defensive line. And again, nothing against the guys that were there. Everyone on that team was hardworking. But I think football has gone away that you've got to find time. And now, I will say this, when Chris Jones came, we started to see a lot of 3-down lineman stuff where more linebackers were involved. But I have to believe, and this could be an old Winnipeg thing too, you've got to be able to get better pressure with 4 men. And 4 down linemen. Yeah, and listen, when Dwayne Hendricks and Brandon Barlow came from Toronto to Hamilton, I was excited because these guys had stellar seasons in Toronto. I thought, you know, from an inside or even defensive end position, they could get to the quarterback or at least, you know, have those QB pressures. Nick Usher in flashes was really good, but there were some games where you thought, is 75 playing today? Like, what's going on? And this is not an effort thing, right? Because there's other guys on the side of the other side of the ball who are pushing back against you. So, you know, there's no more Joe Montfords in the league. Willie Jefferson might be the closest thing. But for a guy to get, you know, 18, 20, 25 sacks in the season, we haven't seen that in years, in eons. But yeah, D-line play is huge. And if you can get to the quarterback with 4, and now you got, you know, all the other guys, you know, playing zone or man-to-man or whatever the case is, that'd be massive. So, yeah, my second, or at least if it's not linebacker, it's D-line to get to the quarterback to make the other defenders that much more effective. I thought they were just a little light. Very athletic, good in speed, but I thought they got pushed around a little bit against the run against some teams, and I think that was only because of their physical size that, you know, no longer is there a Ted Laurent that stands at, you know, that rocket ball, 6'4", 285, 300. That is just, you know, because of his low center of gravity, it's just hard to push off the ball. But I see a lot of guys a little thinner, great coming off the edge. But I feel like sometimes against a bigger offensive line could be pushed away at times.
You mentioned Ted Laurent. Here's a guy who was double teamed like almost every snap. And so now you got 2 guys on him. That's going to free up another guy to, you know, make a twist or do whatever to get to the quarterback. So, yeah, guys like that don't grow on trees. Ted Laurent was a special player and was a great guy in the locker room too, right? So if you can get, you know, the best of both worlds, high character guy with a high motor who can get to the QB, yeah, you're laughing.
Let's look elsewhere around the league. And Rick, I mean, you and I have been covering this league for a very, very long time. Can you remember an off season with so much movement, player movement, coach movement, and we haven't even gotten to free agency yet?
Yeah, and, you know, throw in some GMs, too.
Yes.
Ryan Rigmaiden in BC. You know, Ed Hervey going from Hamilton to back to Edmonton. Ted Govaya coming here. Like, it has been, and that's just from a front office perspective. Now you throw in Vernon Adams Jr. gets traded. Jake Mayer finds another team. Cody Fajardo's with another team. McLeod Bethel-Thompson. Yeah.
Wow.
Like, yeah, a lot of change in the Canadian Football League. And I think it's exciting for fans, right? We got a new quarterback, or we have a new running back. You know, James Butler and William Stanback kind of, you know, switch positions. But, you know, for me, from I don't know if loyalty is the word, but from a fan perspective, and I know we've talked about this before, I think one of the challenges that the CFL has is, you rarely have a player who's with a team for 15 years anymore, or even 10 years anymore. Like Simone Lawrence was a 10-year guy, right? And I think that says a lot to the fans, not only from, those are probably only going to be superstar players, and the teams don't want to let them go, and those players don't want to move, and so it's extremely rare. But at the same time, when you have all this movement, especially at the quarterback position or a head coach or a GM, it does create a lot of buzz. And a lot of buzz means a lot of eyeballs, which means, at the end of the day, a little more revenue for the league or those teams in terms of merchandise sales or whatever the case is, interest in the league. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You want to maintain that kind of brand loyalty. When you buy a player X jersey, you don't want that player X to be gone the next season, right? And I'll take, Scott Radley's kind of mentioned this too, and I didn't really think about what he was thinking about when he did mention it. But on a game day, we would be in the press box and we would look down at formerly Tim Hortons Field and see Garney Henley jerseys, Mosca, McManus, Hitchcock, Morreale, like you name the legends of the past, but there's very few Bo Levi Mitchells or Shamar Bridges, or you name a current player, you rarely see their jersey. Now, I so badly want to see many of those jerseys.
Yeah, that's because the people that bought number 2 Johnny Manziel jerseys got burned,
and now they ripped off Manziel, they put Peters on there, and they're good.
It's like, oh, my favorite player is a cornerback.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But you're right. I mean, you don't see that anymore. And hey, all due respect to those wonderful legends of the past for Tiger Cats. I mean, we'll be talking about them forever until maybe they win another Grey Cup. But even those men have said, look, we're okay with being replaced, right?
Yes.
We're okay with that at this point, 25 years later. But you're right. You just don't see any of the new jerseys, because you were well right. These 1+1 contracts or 1-year contracts don't really lend to a lot of loyalty.
Yeah. And this is why primarily, and then 2 reasons for it. Number one, if you're a fan, you're probably going to buy the jersey of a quarterback of your team, because number one, they're usually a superstar in the Canadian Football League. You look around the league and 9 teams, the quarterbacks are in that superstar kind of category. Number two, you're probably confident that they're going to be there for at least 2 years, if not 3. And a lot of the quarterbacks today are signing these 3-year contracts, which is awesome. But Cody Fajardo was kind of in that boat, and now they got Davis Alexander, and they're like, hey, Cody, we're going to ship you off to Edmonton. So I'd love to see more, James Butler, BC Lions jerseys being sold this year than, Nathan Rourke, although that's never going to happen, but you kind of catch my drift. I'd love to see other players get kind of that love too.
Biggest move for you? The one
that's happened already?
Yeah, that's happened already.
Without a doubt, I think, and there's been a number of them that we kind of just shared about, but it's got to be Vernon Adams, right? Like you go from from his perspective, you go from being a backup quarterback in BC to now being the starter in Calgary. Calgary goes from Jake Mayer, who was an effective quarterback, to Vernon Adams Jr., who is an MOP candidate. That is going to reinvigorate what the Stampeders are all about. And on the flip side, from the most interesting kind of offseason move, you mentioned it, it's the Davis Alexander. Yeah. Here's a guy who I think went 4-0 last year. Won a ball game at Tim Hortons Field, didn't seem frazzled at all, had firm control of what Montreal was doing offensively. They're going to get Tyson Philpott back on the field, which is another weapon for him, and he's got another few more weapons at his disposal. I think from an interest standpoint, now that he's the guy without a legitimate starter kind of pushing him, how does he do? How does Montreal do? Are they the class of the East still? And if he doesn't do well, then I think they're going to struggle. But that I'm more interested in seeing how he's going to do than how Vernon Adams is going to impact Calgary. So I think that's going to be a positive impact.
For me, the Vernon Adams had to happen. It had to happen. It's just a matter of was he going to go. To me, it was either Saskatchewan or was going to be Calgary. I'm with you. The Davis Alexander to me, because to me that's a general manager rolling the dice and saying, look, I'm going to give you a 3-year contract. I believe I'm in the range of $4 $400,000 a year, right? So they are giving, it's a financial commitment, and they are not just giving him a 1+1 or a 1-year deal, 3-year deal. You are the guy. And I think in the press conference said the future is now. And this is when Cody Fajardo had not been.
Yeah, it was still with the team.
It was still with the team. And I was like, whoa, right? Like this is, and you're right, 4 games, and he was dynamite. I thought at times last year, I'm like, is he better than Cody?
Yeah.
I actually thought about that a couple of times last year, but to me, that is the ultimate rolling of the dice, feeling like as GM Machocha would say, I know my team, and good luck.
Yeah, there's 2 other things, off-season kind of question marks for me, and one is in Edmonton. And, Cody Fajardo goes to the Elks. They got Ed Hervey there, new head coach and Mark Killam. The buzz around that team is huge. And Trey Ford is going to be, by all accounts, the guy.
You're the man.
And I am so hopeful that he becomes the guy for 18 games, not a 5-game stretch and then we're not doing well, let's mix it up again. I want to see what he can do for a whole season, because when he's on the field, he's electric. And I think the biggest hurdle that he has to clear is the consistency standpoint. And, can he be above average every game and still add all that electricity that we see from time to time? And the other one is Winnipeg. How much do they run it back in terms of the veterans that they have on the field? Because that is a veteran-laden lineup and a perennial Grey Cup contender because of the talent that they have. But do they say, okay, we'll do it again, we'll try it again? Let's not forget, the Grey Cup is in Winnipeg this season. So I would not doubt, head coach Mike O'Shea and the front office in Winnipeg, them to say, yeah, let's do it. Like, this is it. This is our last hurrah.
It's crazy to me. Anyone that has watched sports of any length of time understands that when it comes to these long eras of fantastic teams, I'll use my team as an example in English soccer, Manchester City, a decade long of unbelievable play. 4 times champion in England. It never happened before. But right now, the play has gone woof.
Off the cliff.
Sometimes it teeters off, and sometimes it just goes woof. And again, Winnipeg taking a lot of chances on a lot of older bodies, men they trust, which I think is important for the head coach, as it is with City as well too, and the manager. There's a lot of trust there, but athletically and even mentally, body-wise, can you get it done one more time? I mean, Simone said this last week, that when you looked at the Grey Cup and you saw Nick Arbuckle versus Zach Collaros, is it a discussion?
Yeah. That's why the spread was, 10.5 or whatever it was?
Right?
Yeah.
But Zach Collaros was, and I know there was injuries too, but he was awful.
Yeah.
And he would sit here too, and I know he would say that. I say that because he was not very good.
Yep.
Right? So, have we seen the best of Zach?
Yeah, when it comes to a championship game too, especially in football, it's only one game.
Yep.
Right? You play a best out of 7, and maybe Winnipeg wins that series. Right? It would never happen. But at the end of the day, and let's not forget, Dalton Schoen was gone for the year. They had a number of injuries. But that speaks to the makeup of the team. An older team, veteran-laden. You know what you're going to get if they're healthy and if they're consistent in terms of their performance. This is a team that started 0-4 and 2-5 at one point of the season.
1-4, yeah. They were. I mean, you were on my CFL podcast, and we were even here, and we're talking about it's over.
Yeah,
like they're
what's
old.
going on? Yeah, and then all of a sudden, flip a switch.
They got hot,
and they won 7 in a row, wherever the case was, and that's what you get from a team that you knew what you were going to get out of previously. You knew that Zach was going to come through at some point of the season, and Willie Jefferson was going to be Willie Jefferson, and the defense was, and so when you have that, I think the trust factor with Mike O'Shea is like, okay, we're eventually going to get to where I want to get to, and they eventually did, even though they didn't win the whole thing. The question is that the belief again this offseason? It's one of the more intriguing kind of questions of this CFL offseason.
Well, the front office in Winnipeg is decayed. It is decayed, but the players are still there. The old fellas are there. Let's see what happens there. Let's switch to the NFL. Wild card weekend. Dud?
I wouldn't say no, not necessarily. I mean, there were some exciting games. Yeah. I like the fact that there were games Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You know,
it was great.
I didn't do anything.
Yesterday I was sad.
Football. There was no football on. What do we do? Yeah, I mean, yeah, there were some pretty good matchups. There were some blowouts though, and yeah, you're going to get that from time to time, but. At the end of the day, I think the best teams won, or at least the teams that performed the best, certainly on game day. I'm really looking forward to this weekend because I think we have some really good matchups. We have some barn burner matchups in terms of quarterback versus quarterback or head coach versus head coach. This might be, with apologies to championship weekend or even the Super Bowl, the best kind of weekend for playoff football.
Did Sam Darnold lose an opportunity at making $50 million a year?
Yeah.
And what would you do there?
Yeah, and
full knowing you've drafted McCarthy,
JJ McCarthy,
in the first round, and after the way he played through most of the preseason, many projected him to be the starter this year.
Yeah. So Sam Darnold, let's say they win the ball game over the weekend, and they beat the Rams, neutral site. You know, they won 14 games in the regular season, and then they lose this coming weekend. I still look at the entirety of the year, even though Sam Darnold was a great story. The defense played great. Brian Flores and his system really, I think, took that team to the next level. Aaron Jones in the backfield was sensational all year. You got one of the best receivers in Justin Jefferson, and you add in some other pieces like Addison and Hawkinson. I mean, a really lethal team. Could they have gotten to 14 wins with J.J. McCarthy this year? Probably not, right? That's probably a tall ask for a rookie quarterback. I don't think, knowing that they already have J.J. in their back pocket, I don't think they would have went to Sam Darnold to say, we're going to pay you $50 million, which is the going rate for the stud quarterback in the NFL, because they have the future in their back pocket. Maybe he gets $40 million and they say, we'll sign you a 3-year deal. I don't know. But
if they franchise him, it's probably going to be about 30.
Yeah. Here's the other part of my kind of belief of Minnesota, and I think Vikings fans are probably going to tar and feather me. But I think this was the worst 14-win team in the history of the NFL.
What?
How many teams did they beat with a winning record? 3. And Green Bay was 2 of those. That, and Houston, I think, was the other. And they finished, 9-8 or 10-7? I mean, they were a good team. I don't think they were an exceptional team. They're not on the level of Detroit or Buffalo or Baltimore or KC or Philadelphia. I think they're a notch down, and they kind of proved that in the last 2 games. They were horrible against the Lions, and they were horrible against the Rams.
I just think if I'm anyone in that organization with any type of control, I'm moving on.
Absolutely.
I'm moving on now, like right now.
Yeah.
I think that Sam Darnold, there's a reason why he's been great story of what he did this year, but I think there's a reason why he had been a quote journeyman. Right? Because we saw his weaknesses first exposed by the Lions. With a Lions defensive attack that said we're going to go man on man, we're going to blitz, not just we're going to every single play we're going to put heat on you. And we saw the nervousness, the high throws, the loss of accuracy. No one is ever going to go sell out man on man defense and blitz every play. But these teams. Detroit starting it, and of course what the Rams did this week too, with a team that's even better at blitzing, the Rams are than the Lions are, and we saw the end results. He's been found out.
Detroit decimated with injuries on the defensive side of the ball. The Rams, what did I hear? The lowest paid defense in the National Football League, which screams to you a lot of free agents, a lot of rookies, a lot of newbie guys, and they still got the job. They look electric. The Rams defense looked electric, and Sam Darnold looked lost. And so I think if you're Minnesota, you say, all right, the future is now, right? And here we go with J.J. McCarthy, and we'll see what he can do.
One final question.
Yes.
And I know you...
I think I know what's coming. And it's not, are the Leafs going to win a playoff series?
No. What's up with your Dolphins?
Yeah. That's for another time.
It's great because, both you and I are on the internet and not just radio, we're on television. We're soaking up all the sources. And everyone that is calling it maybe one of the biggest playoff games in a decade. Bills, Broncos, Sunday night. You knew they were going to put it on a Sunday night prime time.
Bills, Ravens.
Sorry, Bills, Ravens. Yeah. Sorry, Bills, Broncos. We already got rid of that, right? Bills, Ravens, the MVP conversation, the two quarterbacks, the fact that these teams are starving to get to that next level. Both have something to prove, not only against each other, but against who probably will be the team that have to go to Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. Yeah. So, and either one of those would be a good matchup. So, with all due respect to your Dolphins, the fish, Bills or Ravens?
The line at last check is -1 Ravens. And when I saw that, I thought, wow, that's a slap in the face to Buffalo.
It didn't start out that way.
No, it didn't start out that way. But I think the betting public is like, we're all in on Lamar. We're all in on King Henry. We're all in on an improved defense and especially a secondary. And I still thought, wow, that is a knock against the Bills. The game is in Buffalo. The weather is going to be like -10 or -14 with a wind chill Sunday night. Not much snow, like a centimeter of snow, so that's probably not going to be a factor. But everything that the Bills have accomplished this year, when a lot of the pundits said this defense isn't good enough, and when midway through the season the injuries started to pile up and they thought there's no way they're going to hang on. Like they have the star-studded quarterback and a lot of good, pieces on the offensive line, probably the best offensive line in the NFL, that they're going to stumble. And in every step of the way, Buffalo has said, no, we're still going to win. They lose Stephon Diggs in the offseason. Not lose, but,
7 starters gone.
Yeah, and still number 1 in the AFC East, challenged for the number 1 seed basically all season, beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the regular season. A team that, I don't want to say is disrespected, but when I look at that number, I thought, wow, like Buffalo's going to look at that and say, all right, we're going to show you again. So my gut is telling me Buffalo. My head is telling me Baltimore. Because I think the Ravens, in what they have, especially in the run game, and I'm not saying Buffalo's run game's not good, because it is good, with Allen and Cook, but what Lamar and Derek have done throughout the season, not just in the last couple of weeks, has been spectacular. When one guy doesn't have the ball, the other does, and look out when they do. And not only can Lamar obviously run, he's always been a fantastically talented running quarterback, but this year especially, throwing the football, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, like that is superhuman. The first QB in NFL history with 4,000 passing yards and 800 rushing yards. He's a special guy. So why my gut is saying Buffalo is because it's in Buffalo. And it's going to be an electric atmosphere. I'm giving the Bills an edge because I think that they have a chip on their shoulder. Josh Allen has been unbelievable all season. He's making the best out of a scenario in which he's making everyone around him better. And I don't think Baltimore gets to Josh the way Buffalo might be able to get to Lamar. So if I'm putting some money down at the end of the day, I'm saying the Bills by a point. And I think it's a high-scoring game like 28-27.
I think what people also have to remember too, because people, I think, and this is where I think the betting line is looking at, and they've been reviewing the tapes of the big, I think it was 150 yards rushing that Henry put up against Buffalo in Week 4 in that Week 4 or 5 victory, which was 35-10. But people have to remember, too, the Bills were without Matt Milano. They were without their middle linebacker, and he has been playing better every single game. They were without their outside linebacker. Taron Johnson was gone, their cornerback as well, too. Those 3 players are there. This defense is finally healthy, and as you said, there's just, I don't know, like, even for someone like yourself, I mean, we are born to not like Miami. And Miami, the same thing with the Bills. But I'm going to ask you this. Is there, what is it about Josh Allen? He's a likable guy.
Absolutely.
Like, he's just, I don't know what it is. I can't put a finger on it, but he's a likable guy, and I cheer for him, just as I did those teams in the early 90s and Kelly and Thomas and Smith. It's reinvigorated my fandom at this age of my life where I feel like I've seen it all, right? I'm on edge for these guys and really cheer for them. And I think, just looking downhill, like something tells me what a Super Bowl matchup it would be. The Bills versus Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
Two starved fan bases.
Yeah.
And for the first time in their history, one of them will win a Super Bowl. Right?
Yeah.
One of them.
Yeah.
Because everyone that gets to the Super Bowl, they've won one in the past, right? I can't remember the last time where you've had a matchup of two teams that have never won.
Yeah, that would be the most interesting match, the most hyped matchup, because while Buffalo has been there 4 times, Detroit's never ever been there.
No.
And you have the Dan Campbell experience. He's
Dan Campbell,
a story by himself.
It really is.
The Josh Allen factor. I mean, it would be a tremendous.
The regular season game that they played.
Yeah. Was like 90-91 or whatever. I don't know. Like there were so many points scored. That would be, and that's in a dome, so weather's not an issue. Yeah. It would be another track meet. It would be like Bills Rams from a couple of weeks ago, 44-42 or whatever it was.
Yes.
That would be, I think, for me, just because my team's not in the dance, and I didn't expect them to get to the dance. For me, Bills Lions would be the perfect kind of Super Bowl. 2 starving fan bases, one just down the highway, that had so many tragedies in 4 straight finals and not getting in. And Detroit, this sad sack team for ages, finally getting to the big dance with a quarterback who once got to a Super Bowl and it didn't go very well.
It got thrown away.
Yeah. I mean, so many great storylines. That would be a fantastic Super Bowl.
I say this, and I say this with this guy on my, actually, in this collar. He's on my shoulder.
Yes,
going,
what does he say?
Hi, my name's Pat Mahomes. I'm Mahomes. Don't you remember?
You know what? We're going to see Chiefs Eagles again. I could just see it.
I can't take it. No more of these guys. Stop it. Then somehow Taylor Swift's going to be in a booth. The Swiftie effect. Yeah. She's going to be in a booth with, Travis Kelce's mom. And do we have to do this again?
Yeah. If it is Mahomes again in the Super Bowl, I think Fox has the game, doesn't it? And Tom Brady's going to be on the call. So hearing Tom Brady talk about Pat Mahomes potentially one day, I don't think it's ever going to happen, breaking his, Super Bowl championship record. I mean, he's got 3 already. If he had 4 and he's not even 30 yet.
Could beat him on the MVP vote.
Yikes.
The MVP
That'd
Super
be a
Bowl
story.
vote. Oh, my goodness. And the first team to ever win 3 straight Super Bowls.
Yeah, it's never happened.
Amazing. Rick, awesome stuff. Thank you so much. I love your knowledge, your opinions. I think it's going to be a real fun time here for Tiger Cat fans. Glad that you got the content going throughout the off season as well too. Glad to hear that is a hit as well too. But let's be honest, looking forward to kickoff.
Yes,
at least training camp, and then the questions really start.
Yeah, June can't come soon enough.
Thanks a lot for joining us.
You got it.
All right, that's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And if you just seen and heard, we love talking sports. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, we want you. Sportsline Podcast, you want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. If you have something to say, please comment. Go Bills, go Bills! For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much, and we'll see you tomorrow.